He saw worn canvas jacket fraying at the cuffs. He didn't see the controlled breathing of someone who'd cleared rooms under fire. He didn't see the legend who earned the call sign Reaper in Hartman Province. Colorado Springs Airport. 6:36 a.m. Terminal B stretched long and industrial, floor polished to a mirror shine, fluorescent lights humming their endless mechanical prayer overhead. Katie Rodriguez guided the blind veteran through the crowded checkpoint corridor, her hand steady on his elbow, fingers positioned exactly where they needed to be. Not hovering. Not uncertain. Positioned like someone who'd steadied far heavier things than a man's arm. The veteran's name was Marcus Webb. He wore a faded jacket over khaki slacks, his cane folded against his thigh, his head tilted slightly upward as if still tracking aircraft that had become invisible to him 7 months ago. His eyes were milky blue, unseeing, but his shoulders carried the particular rigidity of someone who'd learned to move through space by sound and memory alone. Katie had memorized his gait in the parking lot. 2 small steps forward. A pause. A third step. Right shoulder slightly higher than the left, old shrapnel wound, probably Kandahar, probably 2011 based on the unit insignia she'd glimpsed inside his jacket lining. She wore civilian clothes deliberately. Worn Levi's, canvas jacket with fraying cuffs, a simple grey t-shirt underneath. Her combat boots were hidden beneath the jeans. Her hair was down, longer than regulation, darker than it had been before the reassignment. She looked like a nurse on her way to a shift. She looked like nobody important. She looked exactly like what she was supposed to look like. What she was not supposed to look like was military. Inside the jacket's interior seam, a unit patch was sewn with field stitches, the kind done in dim light with a needle pulled from a med kit. 5th Special Forces Group. The patch had been there since her last rotation in Hartman Province, since the mission she still didn't have clearance to discuss with anyone except the dead. Easy, Katie whispered as Marcus approached a column near the security checkpoint. Her grip on his arm tightened infinitesimally. Her body tensed 1/2 second before his balance shifted. The veteran had started to drift left, his spatial awareness sliding, his inner ear misfiring in the cavernous noise of the terminal. 3 travelers pushed past them pulling roller bags. A child shrieked somewhere near the food court. An announcer's voice boomed about Flight 1847 to Dallas. Katie's hand shot out. Caught him before his shin connected with the column. Her movements were economical, no wasted energy, no hesitation. The kind of catch someone makes after holding people upright through shock, blood loss, and morphine hazes. Her other hand never left his elbow. Muscle memory. Pattern. Training. Marcus steadied himself. He exhaled slowly through his nose. "I'm okay," he said quietly. "Just lost the space for a second." "You're good," Katie replied. She kept her voice soft, deferential. The mask she wore was as carefully constructed as the uniform she'd abandoned. "We're almost through. Security checkpoint is 20 feet. Sound of the metal detector is straight ahead." She guided him forward with the same precision she would use threading a central line. Left foot. Right foot. The rhythm of his breathing synchronizing with hers without him realizing. Katie had spent for years learning how to make men feel safe in situations that should terrify them. This was just another variation of the same skill set. Just a blind veteran moving through an airport. Just a nurse with a worn jacket and steady hands. Derek Mercer watched from the airport operations desk, his position elevated 3 steps above the main terminal floor. He was 47 years old, the kind of 47 that money had kept looking polished, expensive suit in charcoal gray, designer glasses from a European brand Katie recognized from base trips, a Rolex that probably cost more than her annual salary. His tablet was clutched in his right hand like a weapon, the screen showing real-time security feeds from 42 camera angles throughout the terminal. He'd been watching Katie and Marcus for exactly 4 minutes and 30 seconds. His eyes narrowed. Derek Mercer had spent 2 decades in airport management. He'd worked his way up from a junior security position at Denver International to operations manager at Colorado Springs, a promotion that had required recommendations from people who owed him favors. He understood liability the way other men understood baseball statistics. Every person who walked through his terminal was either an asset or a risk. Every interaction was either manageable or a lawsuit waiting to happen. The woman in the worn jacket with the fraying cuffs looked like a risk. Katie could feel his attention the way soldiers feel distant observation through a sniper scope. Not a physical touch, but a pressure. A weight. She kept her eyes forward, kept her voice low and even as she guided Marcus through the crowd. 3 more feet. You'll hear the security checkpoint now. TSA agent on your left side will direct you to the screening area. How much time? Marcus asked. His voice carried the particular flatness of someone used to asking questions with only utilitarian answers in mind. 30 minutes before your flight boards, Katie said. Plenty of time. She didn't mention that she would not be getting on that flight with him. She didn't mention that her entire assignment was now entering its final phase. She didn't mention that in exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes, Marcus Webb would be taken into a TSA interview room and told that his personal protection detail had just been exposed, compromised, and fired for exceeding her authority. She didn't mention that what was about to happen in this airport was going to change everything about who she was allowed to be. Derek Mercer stood up from his desk chair. He adjusted his lanyard, an expensive titanium clip holding a badge with his face and title in embossed lettering. He descended the 3 steps with the deliberate pace of someone who expected the crowd to part for him. It usually did. People in uniforms, people with authority in their posture, people who looked like they'd never experienced a moment of doubt in their lives, those people got automatic respect. He did not know that the woman in the worn canvas jacket had once performed a field thoracotomy with a combat knife in a mud compound outside Kandahar while taking fire from 3 directions. He did not know that her controlled breathing was the result of learning to keep her heart rate below 90 beats per minute while her hands worked on a man's open chest cavity. He did not know that she could disarm him, tie him up, and have him unconscious with a pressure point to the brachial plexus in approximately 4.3 seconds. Derek Mercer approached them with a smile that looked manufactured in a factory somewhere in Switzerland. He said. His voice carried the particular tone of someone used to being obeyed. If I could have a moment. Katie turned. She didn't let go of Marcus's arm. Her expression was neutral, open, completely unremarkable. Of course. I'm Derek Mercer, Airport Operations Manager, he said, stepping closer. His cologne smelled like money and cleaning chemicals mixed together. I've been monitoring your transit through our terminal, and I have to say, I'm concerned about the level of assistance you're providing this gentleman. Marcus stiffened beside Katie. His jaw tightened. But he said nothing. He was used to this. After 7 months of blindness, he was probably very used to strangers making decisions about his body and his competence without asking him directly. Katie's hand remained steady on his arm. Her breathing remained even. When she spoke, her voice was measured, careful, exactly what Derek Mercer expected from someone about to be corrected by a superior authority figure. I'm providing mobility assistance, Katie said. We're moving through the checkpoint now. Everything is proceeding smoothly. That's just it, Derek said, his expression shifting into something that looked like concern but wasn't quite. It's not proceeding smoothly. I've been watching you, and frankly, your technique is what I'd expect from a volunteer, not a professional. When your passenger stumbled near the column, you didn't stabilize him properly. Your grip was too far from his center of gravity. Katie didn't respond immediately. She could have. She could have explained that she'd used a specific technique designed to catch someone in balance recovery without triggering their startle reflex. She could have detailed the biomechanics involved. She could have explained that Marcus hadn't actually stumbled because his center of gravity was off, he'd lost his spatial awareness in a new acoustic environment, something that happened to people with recent vision loss whenever they encountered large unfamiliar spaces. But explaining would have required asserting authority she wasn't supposed to have. I'll be more careful, Katie said instead. Her voice carried the exact texture of someone who'd just been corrected and accepted the correction. It was a masterclass in humility. It was also, in this moment, a calculated tactical decision. Derek Mercer's smile widened. He'd been right. He'd reasserted control. The woman in the worn jacket had accepted his authority, which meant his instinct about her incompetence had been correct all along. Good, he said. He turned his attention to Marcus. Sir, I want you to know that we have professional transport services here at the airport. If you'd prefer, I can arrange for someone more qualified to assist you through security. Someone with actual training. No offense to your companion here, but I'd hate to see you delayed because of inadequate assistance. This was the moment. Katie could feel it the way you feel a moment of decision before a mission begins. This was the instant where her cover either held or shattered. This was where she either remained invisible or revealed herself. She kept her hand steady on Marcus's arm. That won't be necessary, Marcus said. His voice was quiet, but something had changed in it. Something had hardened. Katie knows what she's doing. Derek Mercer's expression flickered. Just for a moment. Just long enough for Katie to catch it. He'd expected the veteran to defer to him too. He'd expected both of them to accept his authority without question. He'd expected compliance from the vulnerable and gratitude from the grateful. What he hadn't expected was loyalty. What he hadn't expected was that sometimes the person standing next to you in a crowded airport terminal isn't a nurse with a worn jacket and fraying cuffs. Sometimes they're the reason you're still alive at all. The veteran's hand tightened on her elbow as they moved through the security queue, and Katie felt the tremor there, not fear, but the calibration of trust. They'd done this 47 times in 3 months. Her palm stayed steady against his back. The airport hummed with that particular 8 a.m. chaos, coffee cart steam rising, roller bags colliding with tile, announcements crackling overhead like distant artillery fire. Derek Mercer watched from his operations desk near Gate B7, tablet in hand, that same expression Katie had learned to recognize, the look of a man whose authority was being quietly, systematically ignored. The veteran stumbled slightly over a threshold, his cane catching the edge. It was nothing. A half-inch miscalculation. Katie adjusted her grip, guided him through without breaking rhythm. Mercer was already moving. His voice cut through the terminal like a blade finding space between ribs. He stepped directly into their path, his name tag catching light, Derek Mercer, Airport Operations Manager, the title printed in letters that apparently meant something in his mind. If you can't properly assist your companion, we'll need to call for professional transport. Some people clearly don't know how to handle special needs passengers. Katie felt the veteran's shoulders tense. She kept her breathing even. One measured breath in through her nose. The air smelled like industrial floor cleaner and spilled coffee, the olfactory signature of airports everywhere. I've got him, Katie said, her voice pitched low, south of defiant. You've got him. Mercer repeated, his tone rising in that particular register that was designed to gather attention. It worked. A woman with a rolling carry-on paused. A family of 4 turned. A businessman in a charcoal suit looked up from his phone. Mercer was performing now, and he knew the audience was watching. Sir, I'm trained to recognize inadequate care. This young lady appears to be overwhelmed by the responsibility. That's not a reflection on her character, it's a reality of capability. The veteran's jaw clenched. Katie felt it through her hand on his arm. I'm good, the veteran said quietly. She's got me. Well, that's reassuring, Mercer continued, addressing the gathering crowd rather than either of them, but airport protocol exists for a reason. We have liability concerns. Trained professionals, he gestured to himself, the movement sweeping and granular, we exist precisely to prevent situations like this from becoming something worse. A teenager recording on her phone. 2 grandmothers exchanging glances. The businessman now fully engaged, watching the drama unfold with the detached interest of someone who'd never understood what it meant to be the subject of scrutiny. Katie took another breath. One tear escaped down her cheek, not from fear, not from shame, but from the compressed anger of someone watching a man mistake his clipboard for a conscience. She wiped it away without breaking eye contact with Mercer. Her hand stayed steady. No tremor. No hesitation. You want to know something? Katie's voice changed registers, then dropped an octave, gained weight. Not loud. Quieter, actually, which meant everyone had to lean in. This veteran served 3 tours in Hartman province with special forces. He earned a unit patch that I've seen grown men cry looking at. He deserves better than your assumptions. The crowd stilled. Even Mercer blinked, recalibrating. He recovered quickly, though, the way petty men do when their authority is challenged. His smirk returned. And you're what, exactly? A nurse, right? From the airport medical clinic. He was building something now, constructing a narrative brick by brick. Probably one of those stolen Valor types playing dress-up. I've seen it before, wannabe heroes in thrift store jackets thinking they can. She's my wife, the veteran said. The lie landed like a flare. Not a married lie, Katie had never worn a ring, but a signal so clear that everyone understood what he was saying. This wasn't a caregiver relationship. This was something that belonged to him. Mercer's face darkened. His hand moved to his tablet, his fingers already moving to document something. Your paperwork will be reviewed. Both of you. We have procedures. They made it through security 20 minutes later. Katie produced her credentials, Colorado Springs Airport Medical Staff Authorization, valid through March 2026. Mercer photographed them anyway, standing unnecessarily close, his breath smelling like the energy drink he'd crushed before 8 a.m. He made a note in his operations log. She could see the words from over his shoulder, suspicious pair. Possible unauthorized practice. Monitor. As they walked toward the departure gate, Mercer's voice reached her one more time. Some people mistake confidence for competence. Usually ends badly. The nickname he'd given her was already spreading through the terminal like a virus transmitted by whispers. Nurse Ratty. It was stupid and juvenile, and somehow it stuck because that's what crowds do. They weaponize the smallest cruelties and pass them around like currency. In the employee break room 20 minutes later, Katie poured coffee into a styrofoam cup. 2 gate agents stood when she entered, abandoning half-eaten sandwiches on the table. They didn't make eye contact. One of them whispered something to the other as they left, and Katie didn't have to hear the words to know they were about her. She sipped the coffee. It tasted like it had been brewed at 5 a.m. She was on break for 7 minutes, and the veteran was sitting near gate B7, his fingers moving across the Braille magazine someone had left behind, patient as stone. The next voice she heard came through the intercom at 9:23 a.m. Not her name. Not a code. Just the sound of chaos beginning, a mechanical screech, rubber wheels locking, metal shrieking against concrete. 50 feet from gate B7, a motorized baggage carousel malfunctioned. The motor seized. A metal panel, maybe 18 inches wide, half an inch thick, fashioned from industrial aluminum, came free from the machinery housing. It traveled in a perfect arc through the air like a blade finding its target. It struck a teenage boy in the chest. He went down hard. Blood spread across his gray Zeppelin t-shirt in a pattern that Katie's brain classified instantly, sucking chest wound. Pneumothorax. The lung collapsing. The boy's mouth already opening and closing like a fish, his body understanding before his mind did that something fundamental had changed. Katie moved before the thought completed. Her body knew this choreography. Muscle memory took over. 18 years of training, 2 combat tours, 17 field procedures, her hands were already moving toward him. She reached him in 4 strides. A woman screamed something. The businessman from the coffee line was backing away. Mercer's voice cut through the chaos. Someone call 911. Already happening, Katie said, not looking up. Her fingers were assessing now, finding the ribs, counting the intercostal spaces. I need a pen. Now. A businessman fumbled one from his pocket, a standard Bic, blue ink, the kind that costs nothing and saves lives. Katie disassembled it with hands that had done this 43 times before, ink cartridge separated from the plastic tube, the ballpoint removed. What remained was a hollow casing roughly the diameter of an A4 needle. The teenager's lips were blue. His oxygen saturation was crashing, his body going into shock from a collapsed lung and the air filling his thoracic cavity. Every second mattered. 8 seconds left before his heart stopped. Maybe 10 if he was lucky. Mercer's hand grabbed her shoulder. "Stop. You are unauthorized to provide medical intervention on airport property. I'm calling security. You're practicing medicine without a license on federal grounds." Katie's voice dropped. Not loud, quieter than quiet. The register of command. "Move. Now." There was something in that voice that made Mercer hesitate, made his fingers loosen their grip just enough. Katie shrugged him off without looking, found the second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, identified the rib landmarks through pure tactile memory, and positioned the pen casing. The hiss of escaping air was the most beautiful sound in the world. The teenager gasped. Color rushed back into his face like someone had restored the saturation on a photograph. His oxygen levels climbed, 75, 82, 88, stabilizing. His lungs were re-expanding. His body was coming back. Mercer stood frozen, his tablet slack in his hand, his authority suddenly feeling very small in the face of a girl in a worn jacket who'd just saved a teenager's life with a ballpoint pen and knowledge he couldn't classify or quantify or dismiss. The departure board flickered at gate B7. United for 47 to Denver. On time. Katie sat 3 rows behind the blind veteran, a worn paperback open on her lap, camouflage. Marcus Webb's fingers moved across the Braille magazine with the same precision she'd seen him use to navigate the terminal's geography. He'd memorized the layout already. 16 steps to the water fountain. 12 to the men's restroom. 43 to the security checkpoint they'd cleared 2 hours ago. The man read maps the way other people read faces. She watched him from the edge of her vision, positioned where she could move in any direction within 2 seconds. This was the assignment. Shadow him. Document any approach. Wait for the contact that intelligence said was coming through Colorado Springs. The veteran was bait. Katie was the cage. The baggage carousel screamed. It was a sound like nothing else, metal grinding against metal, a mechanical death shriek. Katie's head snapped toward the sound before her conscious mind registered it. The carousel near gate B8 had jammed, its rubber belt twisted, and now it was ejecting luggage like a malfunctioning cannon. A 50-pound hard-shell Samsonite rocketed across the floor at 40 miles per hour. Then another. Then a third. The carousel convulsed, belched, and unleashed a suitcase the size of a small refrigerator that crashed into a charging station and buckled the steel frame. Travelers scattered. A woman shrieked. Security personnel near gate B9 froze, radios crackling with confused cross-chatter. The teenage boy never saw it coming. He was maybe 16, hoodie and sneakers, standing in line for a smoothie at the terminal cafe when the final piece of luggage came free, a leather duffel bag spinning like a dark projectile. It caught him across the left side of his chest with the force of a sledgehammer. The impact threw him backward 6 feet. He crashed against the cafe counter, and something in that moment, the angle, the velocity, the precise way the luggage edge caught his ribs, punctured his lung. Not the luggage. The duffel's metal frame had fractured a rib, and the shard had done what ribs do when they break in the wrong direction. It had become a blade. The boy collapsed 3 steps from gate B7, gasping for air that wouldn't come, his chest making a sound like wind through a broken window. Sucking chest wound. Pneumothorax. His mouth was open like a fish drowning in air. Katie moved before she was aware of moving. She was on her feet, across the carpet, kneeling beside the boy in what felt like one motion. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was steady. The panic around her, screaming travelers, the carousel still groaning its mechanical death song, security personnel trying to clear the area, it all became distant, muffled, like she was underwater and the world was on the surface. This was the thing they trained out of you in medical school and trained back into you in the field. Emotional anesthesia. Pain is data. This boy is data. Process the data. Save the life. Don't move, she said, her voice flat and calm as a surgeon's. Shallow breaths. In through your nose. Out through your mouth. She pulled his hoodie open. The wound was exactly where she'd seen it 100 times before, the second and third intercostal spaces on the left side, the chest wall moving in paradoxically with each breath, the wet sucking sound that meant air was filling his pleural cavity instead of his lungs. She could hear him drowning inside his own body. She had maybe 6 minutes before his oxygen saturation dropped below the point where a paramedic could restart his heart. A security officer ran toward them, shouting something about step back and wait for medical personnel. Katie ignored him. Her hands were already moving, ballpoint pen from her jacket pocket, ballpoint pen casing more precisely, the same way she'd done it in a tent in Sanjin Valley with a Marine whose thoracotomy had created an air leak that was killing him. She found the second rib, measured 2 fingers above it, felt for the midclavicular line. The landmarks were the same. The body was the same. The pressure was the same. She twisted the pen casing once, twice, and felt the resistance give way. The hiss of air escaping was audible. Immediate. The boy gasped, and his chest wall stopped the paradoxical movement. His breathing became less frantic. His color improved. O2 sat was climbing, not yet, but the trajectory was right. 72. 76. She could hear it in his breathing, see it in the slow return of consciousness to his eyes. Stay with me, she said, one hand resting on his shoulder. Breathe slow. In through your nose. The first paramedic arrived at the 6-minute mark. Then the second. Then a fire department captain with a jump bag and the kind of face that had seen trauma before. Katie kept her hand where it was, steady, while she ran through the vitals with the kind of precision that made the paramedics fall into formation around her without question. 19-year-old male, blunt force trauma to the anterior left chest, approximately 6 minutes ago, Katie said, her voice clipped and professional. Pneumothorax with tension characteristics, needle decompression at second intercostal, midclavicular line at 5 minutes post-impact. Current breathing pattern regular, O2 sat climbing from 68 to 81, heart rate 118 and steady, blood pressure 110/64. He's been conscious the entire time, no loss of awareness, no secondary injuries I can identify. The paramedics exchanged a look, that specific look that meant respect. The fire captain, a man with 30 years of lines around his eyes, nodded once. That pen save bought him the time he needed, the captain said, kneeling down to take over. You military. Katie's eyes flicked to the side. Derek Mercer stood 30 feet away, tablet in his hands, recording everything. The expression on his face had shifted from shock into something colder. Something calculating. She looked back at the fire captain. Just a nurse, she said. The teenager was loaded onto a gurney with practiced efficiency. And 4-line established. Oxygen running. Vital signs stable enough for transport. His mother appeared from the crowd, trembling, and grabbed Katie's hand with a grip that felt like it might break bone. You saved my son, she said, tears streaming. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Katie squeezed back once, then released. The paramedics will take good care of him. That's when Mercer stepped between them. He said to the mother, his voice smooth as river stone, I need to inform you that this woman violated multiple FAA regulations and federal medical practice laws during her intervention. She'll need to provide statements to our security team and local authorities. I'm documenting this incident with the Colorado State Medical Board, the Airport Authority, and TSA. Katie stood motionless. The mother looked confused, then angry, then uncertain. The paramedics had already loaded the teenager into the ambulance. The carousel had stopped groaning. The terminal was returning to normal with the speed of a river flowing past a rock. The crisis was absorbing back into background noise. Mercer didn't stop with a verbal warning. Over the next 90 minutes, he became a documentation machine. Katie watched from a holding area near the security office as he moved between his tablet and a phone, his voice never rising, his tone never changing. Title 49 CFR Section 1542.5 regarding unauthorized emergency response. Colorado Medical Licensing Statutes. Liability Exposure Protocols. He cited regulations like a prosecutor building a capital case. He pulled security footage from 4 different angles. He created a timeline of suspicious behavior patterns, how she'd positioned herself near the veteran, how she'd surveilled the terminal, how she'd assaulted airport management when he tried to stop her intervention. He flagged her relationship with Marcus as requiring additional investigation due to coordinated suspicious activity and the potential human trafficking indicators. The documentation was airtight. At 11:13 a.m., 2 TSA officers approached. 1 woman, 1 man, both moving with the automatic courtesy of people who'd practiced this 1,000 times. Captain Rodriguez, the woman said, and Katie's heart stopped because she hadn't used that name in this airport. We need you to come with us for additional questioning. The word captain hung in the air like a blade. She didn't move. She didn't react. Derek Mercer had stopped walking and was now watching from his podium, his tablet held in front of him like a shield or a weapon. The veteran is also being detained for additional screening, the male officer added. We'll need statements from both of you regarding the events at Gate B7. Katie stood. She didn't speak. She didn't look at Mercer. She extended her hands in a gesture of cooperation, and the TSA officers escorted her from the terminal while Marcus Webb was being guided in the opposite direction, his cane tapping a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. Her cover was compromised. Her mission was failing. And somewhere in a classified file, a Pentagon handler was about to get a phone call that would change everything. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that she'd saved a teenager's life in the most public way possible, and it had been weaponized against her by a man who saw compassion as a liability and protocol as a religion. Rain hammered Colorado Springs at 1:34 p.m. like automatic weapons fire against the terminal windows. Katie stood at a bus stop 2 blocks from the airport, cardboard box balanced on her hip, watching water stream down her face. Inside the box, a cracked mug that read "World's Okayest Nurse" in faded letters, a dying succulent from her temporary apartment on Tejan Street, and a photograph in a plastic sleeve, her younger brother Marcus in his first Special Forces uniform, grinning at the camera with the kind of confidence that comes from not knowing what the desert will take from you. She didn't open the box anymore. She didn't need to. Inside the terminal, 2 hours after she'd saved a teenage boy's life with nothing but a ballpoint pen casing and muscle memory, Derek Mercer sat at his operations manager desk on the 2nd floor, 3 incident reports spread across his monitor like evidence at a trial. His fingers moved with methodical precision, each keystroke a small weapon. He typed with the calm efficiency of a man who understood that documentation was armor, thick enough to stop questions, permanent enough to end careers. The first complaint went to the TSA's Compliance Division at 1:06 p.m. Mercer's language was surgical, unauthorized medical intervention on federal property, practicing medicine without a license, potential safety violation involving public endangerment. He attached photographs of the teenage boy's wound, timestamps from the terminal security feed, and a detailed narrative of events that made Katie's actions sound less like an emergency response and more like reckless interference. He cited 4 separate federal regulations, 42 U.S.C. 1395 DD, 49 CFR 1544.229, and 2 others so obscure they seemed invented specifically for this moment. The second complaint, filed with the airport authority at 2:03 p.m., took a different angle. Mercer described Katie as a potential security risk. Suspicious relationship with a blind passenger, he wrote. Unusual level of physical contact. Possible trafficking scenario. Pattern of defensive behavior when questioned by management. He noted her evasive responses to his earlier inquiries about her qualifications, her refusal to provide credentials beyond a nursing badge, her inappropriate familiarity with the veteran. The words were careful, respectful in tone, absolutely lethal in implication. The third complaint, filed with the Colorado Springs Police Department at 2:19 p.m., connected everything into a narrative thread that pulled tight like a noose. Investigation request, possible unlicensed medical practice and assault. Subject is a female, approximately 32 years old, 5 feet 8 inches, possibly using an alias. Subject physically restrained a federal officer from performing my duties and administered medical treatment without authorization. Subject has potential connection to missing persons case or exploitation ring involving the aforementioned blind male victim. Missing persons case. Trafficking scenario. Unlicensed practice. Assault. Mercer had transformed a mercy into a crime, and he'd done it with the precision of someone who'd studied the regulations carefully enough to weaponize them. Katie's phone buzzed at 2:08 p.m. Encrypted message from a number she'd memorized but never called, cover blown. Extract unavailable. Asset in TSA custody. Maintain position. She didn't respond. Responses could be traced. Responses were evidence. Inside TSA interview room B, the blind veteran sat in a metal folding chair that squeaked every time he shifted his weight, a sound like a small animal in pain. 2 TSA agents sat across from him, one taking notes, one reading from a tablet that glowed like a small fire in the fluorescent white room. The air smelled of cleaning solution and the specific staleness of a space designed for interrogation, no windows, no softeners, nothing that suggested anyone had ever walked out of here and changed. "Sir, can you explain your relationship with Katie Rodriguez?" the older agent asked. His name tag read Torres. His voice carried the practiced neutrality of someone who'd asked this question 1,000 times. The veteran's fingers found the faded unit patch sewn inside his jacket lining, the one with the Special Forces insignia, the one that meant everything to people who understood its weight. His name was Marcus Webb, and he'd been a medic in the same unit where Katie had served, the same unit where she'd trained him before her rotation ended, the same unit where he'd performed a medical evacuation under fire that had cost him his eyes. His sightless eyes tracked toward the sound of Torres's voice. "She's taking care of me," Marcus said. Simple. True. Incomplete in ways that mattered. Taking care of how? The second agent pressed. Her name was Garcia. "Are you compensating her? Is there money involved?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "She saved my life. Multiple times. Once with a knife. Once with her hands. Once with words that kept me breathing when the morphine stopped working." Through the door, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Boots on tile. Raised voices. One of them was unmistakably Mercer's, that particular tone of false deference masking pure condescension. Marcus's head turned toward the sound with the sudden precision of a predator sensing movement. His fingers traced the patch stitching, the way he'd done 1,000 times in hospital rooms and dark apartments and moments when the world felt too heavy for a man with no eyes. He whispered one word. "Reaper." Staff Sergeant Chen stood outside the interview room, Marine insignia on his uniform, a TSA credential clipped to his belt, and a trained ear for call signs. He froze. Reaper. That name belonged to a captain in Hartman Province, 2019 to 2021, a combat medic who'd performed emergency procedures under fire that were supposed to be impossible, field thoracotomy with a combat knife, emergency cricothyrotomy with a ballpoint pen casing, survival rates that defied probability. Chen stepped closer to the interview room door. His hand moved to the frame. "Sir, repeat that," he called through the opening. Marcus's face tilted upward, sightless eyes aimed at Chen's voice like a compass needle finding north. "The woman you detained." Her call sign was Reaper. Hartman Province, 2019 to 2021, 75th Ranger Regiment, attached Special Forces. "She trained me. She was the best medic I ever saw." Chen's face went white. He pulled Marcus's file up on his phone, cross-referenced against a database he wasn't supposed to have access to but did anyway, a database that carried names and designations and operational history. His fingers moved across the screen. His breathing changed. "Sir, stay here," Chen said, and he was moving before Marcus could respond, pushing into the terminal corridor where Derek Mercer stood flanked by TSA supervisors, building his case with the calm precision of a man who'd already won. The crowd started gathering like iron filings moving toward a magnet. Airport staff. Passengers waiting for connections. A woman in business casual holding a rolling suitcase. An elderly couple who'd stopped mid-walk because something in the energy had shifted. They could smell it, the moment when power was about to change hands, when the room's center of gravity was about to slip sideways. Major General Patricia Voss stood at Gate C7, waiting for her flight to Ramstein Air Base, military dress uniform creased with the kind of precision that comes from 42 years of institutional discipline. She heard Chen's voice rising in the hallway. She heard fragments: Bronze Star, Combat Saves, Helmand Province. She closed her eyes for 2 seconds, the time it takes to recognize the weight of history repeating itself, and she walked toward the sound. Her stars caught the fluorescent light and scattered it like diamonds. "Who authorized detention of this officer?" Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Officers with 2 stars don't raise their voices. The room recognizes the star pattern and adjusts itself accordingly. Derek Mercer turned, tablet raised like a shield, like documentation could protect him from whatever was about to happen. "With respect, this individual is not military. She's a civilian nurse who..." "You detained a decorated combat officer." General Voss stepped forward. "On what authority?" An army colonel, Patterson, from her name tape, stood beside the general, reading from Chen's tablet, his face moving through a sequence of expressions: confusion, then recognition, then something harder. "Special Forces Medical, that's the Reaper unit." "Who are we talking about here?" A Pentagon liaison appeared like she'd been waiting in the wings for this exact moment, dark suit, phone already pressed to her ear, conversation ending with the kind of finality that comes from being connected to institutional power. She ended the call and stepped forward. Her name was Davidson. Her voice carried the weight of classification levels and security clearances and things that couldn't be discussed in airport terminals. "Captain Rodriguez is active status," Davidson said, addressing General Voss directly. "Off-books protective detail. The veteran is her assigned asset." She turned to Mercer. Her eyes carried no anger, which somehow made it worse. "You've compromised a federal investigation." Derek Mercer opened his mouth. Closed it. The tablet had become heavier in his hands, not physically, but in every other way that mattered. Colonel Patterson read from the screen: field thoracotomy with a combat knife during an ambush. Saved for operators including. He looked toward the interview room where Marcus sat, fingers still tracing his unit patch. "Including you." Marcus nodded from his position by the door. Chen had guided him out, and now he stood in the hallway with his sightless eyes aimed at the colonel's voice. "She trained me to replace her. I got hit doing the job she'd done for 2 years without a scratch." His voice carried the weight of accumulated gratitude, 2 years' worth, plus the time since, plus everything she'd given up by taking the assignment that cost him his eyes. "She's been watching over me since I came home." Derek Mercer's face drained of color, not all at once, but in stages, like someone slowly understanding the terrain they'd been walking through in darkness. There were no credentials," he started. "No identification." "She looked like..." "Like what?" Davidson's voice cut through him like something surgical. "Tell us what she looked like." Mercer's mouth opened and closed. The tablet trembled. Davidson's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked back at Mercer with the expression of someone delivering a verdict. "You should know that's already viral. Someone live-streamed your confrontation at the checkpoint. The whole thing. Your accusations. Her response. The way she stood there while you mocked a veteran's service." She paused. Let that weight settle. Hashtag stolen Valamias is trending on 4 platforms. Your full name, your job title, your employee ID number, all available. 3 major news outlets are already running the story. The crowd had stopped pretending to wait for flights. They were recording now, phones held up like modern totems, capturing the moment when a man realized his documentation had become his indictment. Outside the terminal, Katie stood at the bus stop with rain hammering down, cardboard box still balanced on her hip, watching water stream down the window of the terminal she'd been pulled from 2 hours earlier. Her phone had buzzed 14 times in the last 40 minutes. Notifications from platforms she'd never created accounts on, news feeds flagging her name, people analyzing her every movement from the checkpoint footage. Her cover wasn't just blown, it was scattered across the internet in pieces too small to reassemble. She didn't move. She didn't check her phone. She just stood in the rain with a box containing everything from a life she couldn't keep, watching the terminal where Marcus sat in an interview room with 2-star generals and Pentagon liaisons and TSA agents finally understanding what they'd almost destroyed. Pain was information. Sometimes information came in the form of rain, in the form of cardboard boxes, in the form of recognizing that sacrifice is what you do when the world stops watching, and sometimes it's what you do even when the world is watching too. Inside the sterile TSA interview room, Marcus Webb's head tilts toward the commotion in the hallway. His unseeing eyes point nowhere. But his fingers find it, the faded unit patch sewn inside his jacket lining, the one he's touched 10,000 times since Helmand, the symbol that means someone understands what it costs to see the things he'll never see again. His hand trembles. Not from fear. From recognition. One word escapes his lips, barely audible: Reaper. The Marine TSA officer named Chen freezes. He'd heard that call sign once before, in a classified briefing at Camp Lejeune. Chen leans toward the file. His eyes scan the veteran's intake form, then widen. His fingers move to the classified section, the one marked Pentagon Authority only. He reads silently for 3 seconds. Then he stands, his posture shifting from administrative to something else entirely. Military. Alert. He looks at Marcus Webb like he's just realized he's been sitting across from a legend. Chen's voice carries the precision of someone reading official documentation for a record that will matter: Captain Katie Rodriguez. United States Army Special Forces Medical Corps. Bronze Star with Valor. He pauses. The room seems to compress. Purple Heart. Another pause. 18 confirmed combat saves in Helmand Province. His eyes move from the file to Mercer, who's been watching this unfold with mounting confusion. She was your medic. The hallway door opens. A 2-star general enters, Brigadier General David Voss, in dress uniform because he'd been catching a Pentagon flight when the commotion started. He'd heard his name mentioned over TSA radio chatter. Now he stands in the doorway, and something in Chen's recitation makes him stop. The general's jaw tightens. He knows those numbers. He knows that call sign. He decorated the woman who earned it. Why, the general says, his voice like a tank idling in a garage, is a decorated officer being detained. Mercer stands. His face has gone the color of institutional tile. She's not military, sir. She's just some nurse who assaulted a passenger. She performed an authorized medical. I said step back. The general's words cut through Mercer's voice like a blade through tissue. The tone isn't angry. It's worse. It's the kind of calm that comes from having already survived the worst. Mercer's words die. His mouth stays open. Nothing emerges. The hallway fills with movement. A Pentagon liaison appears, a captain in dress blues carrying a classified folder, the kind that changes everything in rooms like this. The liaison opens it without ceremony, reads aloud specific citations, specific operations, specific dates that Mercer's mind cannot process because they don't fit inside the cage of his authority. Captain Rodriguez was conducting a classified protective detail assignment, authorized at the highest levels, with operational security protocols that supersede local jurisdiction and civilian oversight. The liaison's voice is precise as a scalpel. She was not assaulting anyone. She was performing her duty. Mercer's chest heaves. His hands open and close. He reaches for his tablet, the weapon he'd been building, the documentation trail he'd constructed, and finds it suddenly worthless. Worse than worthless. Evidence. His own emails, his own complaints are about to become part of a federal investigation into harassment of active military personnel on a classified detail. I didn't know, Mercer says. It's the wrong thing to say. That, the general replies, is the core of your problem. But that wasn't the worst part. 12 hours earlier, before any of this, a viral video had been uploaded. Someone at the airport had recorded Mercer's original mockery, his voice cutting through the terminal, his words about Katie being probably one of those stolen Vela types playing dress-up, his physical restraint of her during the teenager's medical emergency, his threat of arrest. The video had been posted to Twitter at 3:17 a.m. By 6:45 a.m., it had 427,000 views. By noon, it had reached Johns Hopkins University Medical School. Dr. Gerald Mercer, age 62, had been sipping his second espresso when his phone buzzed. A former colleague had sent him the video with no message. Just the link. Just the title, Airport Manager Humiliates Decorated Veteran and Combat Medic. Dr. Gerald Mercer watched his nephew mock the blind veteran. Watched him call Katie's nurse ratty. Watched him physically restrain her during a life-saving procedure. Watched him stand over her with his institutional power, his certainty, his complete ignorance of who she actually was. Dr. Gerald Mercer had written Derek's medical school recommendation letter. Had taught him pathophysiology, had guided his career trajectory, had spent 23 years being proud of his nephew. Had believed in meritocracy and credentials and the idea that smart people, good people, would eventually recognize excellence when they saw it. He hadn't believed his nephew would ignore excellence. Would mock it. Would try to criminalize it. That night, Dr. Gerald Mercer recorded a video. It took him 7 takes to get through it without his voice breaking. He posted it to the Johns Hopkins Alumni Network, then to his personal Twitter account, 140,000 followers, mostly medical professionals, military families, and veterans. The video's timestamp, 11:38 p.m. I taught Derek Mercer that credentials matter. His voice was steady. I failed to teach him that character matters more. I watched him humiliate a blind veteran. Watched him attempt to prevent a trained medical professional from saving a teenager's life. Watched him represent the worst of institutional arrogance. As of today, I disavow any professional association with my nephew. He does not represent the values of medicine. He does not represent the values of our family. The video was picked up at 1:33 a.m. by military advocacy groups, nursing associations, airport worker unions. The Airport Authority Board received 4,237 emails by 6:18 the next morning. The word termination appeared in Derek Mercer's corporate Gmail by 7:44 a.m. By Friday, his LinkedIn profile read Seeking Opportunities. By Monday, every other airport in the region had flagged his name. By month's end, he'd been offered one position, teaching CPR certification classes at Pikes Peak Community College. Salary, $15.75 per hour. Location, basement classroom that smelled like old coffee and broken ambitions. His students were half his age. One of them asked if he'd seen the viral video of the airport nurse. Derek said he hadn't. Derek never said anything else for the rest of the semester. 6 months later, a military transport idled on Colorado Springs Airport tarmac, not the civilian terminal, the military apron, where protocols existed beyond Mercer's reach. Captain Katie Rodriguez boarded in dress uniform, her captain's bars catching morning light like promises finally kept. The blind veteran walked beside her, his hand confidently finding her elbow, not as a dependent, but as a battle buddy. He wore the faded Special Forces patch now displayed proudly on his own jacket, no longer hidden in the lining. No longer a secret. A medal. A testimony. General Voss met them at the aircraft stairs. Captain. Your next assignment. She accepted the folder. Protective detail, stateside, still in cover. Still a guardian operating in shadows. The general's eye shifted to Marcus. And you're cleared for the vocational program. Instructor position, training the next generation of combat medics, if you want it. Marcus smiled, the kind of smile that carries the weight of understanding. She already taught me everything worth knowing. They boarded together. Through the terminal windows, airport staff watched the military aircraft taxi toward the runway. Some of them recognized Katie from the video. Her composure at the checkpoint, her quiet response to mockery, her refusal to break even when the world was watching. Most people misread composure as meekness. The ones who understood what it actually meant, restraint, discipline, the strength required not to shatter, those people watched her board that transport and knew they'd witnessed something rare. In the basement classroom of Pikes Peak Community College, Derek Mercer demonstrated chest compressions on a CPR dummy to disinterested students, his phone buzzing with another LinkedIn rejection. 23 applications. 0 callbacks. His professional references, the ones he'd carefully cultivated over 15 years, were either unavailable or explicitly declining to endorse him. On the transport, Katie looked at the photograph from her cardboard box. Her brother. Young and proud. She tucked it into her new briefing folder. The veteran's hand found her shoulder. His voice was quiet, he'd be proud of you. Still protecting people who don't know they need it. Katie's voice matched his, quiet as a prayer. True heroism is what you do when the world stops watching. The aircraft lifted off, carrying 2 operators back into the work that never makes headlines, that never trends, that never stops mattering. Through the window, Colorado Springs disappeared beneath clouds. Mercer's basement classroom disappeared. The viral video, already sliding toward obscurity as new content consumed the feed, disappeared. What remained was the mission. What remained was the work. What remained was the quiet understanding that service means showing up, again and again, for people who will never know your name. If you're enjoying this, please hit like and subscribe, it really helps the channel. And leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from.